Welcome to Art Talk. I'm Patricia Shippee, host of Through the Eyes of the Artist, a program that focuses on art from a human perspective by getting to know the artists, their attitudes, motivations, and their lifestyles, all the things that influence their artistic expression, giving us an opportunity to see our world through the eyes of the artist. Today, we are going to step into the beautiful and romantic world of Marcia and George Phillips. I say romantic because they have found the secret of sharing their art and their life together. And they see our world through eyes that find beauty and harmony. They work together in an incredible symbiosis. Not that they did not first attend the School of Life Experience to earn this creative place. Marcia started dancing as a child and studied ballet at the George Balanchine School of American Ballet, the Ballet Russe, Jose Limon Company, and the Martha Graham Company. Her dancing career ended with an injury, and so she went to work for ABC Television, where she met George, who encouraged her to paint, having seen some of her drawings. She took classes at the Art Students League in New York and also with Sergei Bongart in Los Angeles. George has had a number of what he would call avocations: a singer, teacher, commercial artist, and research writer for the Hearst newspapers for a number of years, and a TV network executive. At New York University, he studied painting with Chuck Close, John Cacciari, with Sidney Dickinson at the Art Students League, and then with Sergei Bongart in Los Angeles. They abandoned their business careers over 10 years ago, moved to the seashore, and devote themselves to their mutual passion, painting. They have both exhibited their work throughout the United States, the Caribbean, and Europe, and their paintings are included in many private, corporate, and public collections. I'm going to ask them to fill in many of the sketchy details of that outline, but first, welcome to Art Talk, Martha and George.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice to have you here.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, good. Where do we begin? It's always hard to know where to begin, but I think I'll ask you, Marcia, tell us a little bit more about how you two met and how painting captured you and changed your lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you've already said, I had to stop dancing, and I left with a broken down foot and a broken heart and went to work at ABC, American Broadcasting Company. And my little angel was on my shoulder and led me to George. That's how George and I met.
Uh-huh.
And it really helped me find a new career, and something that I love very much. And he also repaired my broken heart.
Oh, in many ways. Well, had you started to draw before? Were you drawing while you were painting?
I did. I just enjoyed it very much, and anytime in my spare time, I did a lot of sketching, and would watch George then do hours and hours of painting, and I would just loved watching him. And one day just happened to mention that I had some sketches, and he asked to see them, and I showed them to him, and he said, "Oh, well, you must be painting. You must learn how to paint." And George started me painting.
Then came the paints and the easel.
Yeah.
Well, George, let me ask you about teachers. And you had a number of different teachers. And tell us a little bit about them and how they influenced you and how you came to this impressionist style mode. I'm saying impressionist. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, in the loose application of the term impressionist, yes, they're impressionists. In the strict definition of impressionism, they're really not. I've seen paintings like these called realism, and they're sketchy. So people think something sketchy, why, that's an impression, which is true. So in that sense, they are impressionistic.
Well, I see them as a sort of a synthesis of the Barbizon and realistic impressionism, where you capture a moment. But what about teachers? That's what we...
Actually, only one of the teachers was an impressionist. Chuck Close, as you know, was a photorealist and the, I guess, the pioneer of it, and in this country, the most famous, throughout the world, the most famous. I considered a great privilege to study with him, a magnificent man and a magnificent teacher. And what I studied with Chuck was really criticism.
Oh.
And all the students had to bring in paintings, and then we criticized and he criticized, and he was just fabulous. You learned so much from every minute was a learning experience with that man. Just
a visual literacy is what you probably came out of. That's very interesting.
And Caseri was a pretty wild character and a very enjoyable one, you know, crazy in a delightful way. And there was this constant banter as you were painting. He never stopped talking. Nobody else was allowed to talk, though. If he heard a voice, he'd say, "Did I hear someone talking?" There's nobody in this room who should be talking. You know, you're here to learn. And Bongard, Sidney Dickinson, I can still remember little words he said, you know, word for word. Things he said where I'd been painting for years and I'd never had any instruction. And I was in Brockman's class at the Art Students League for about an hour. Brockman came around, we were painting a portrait, and I said, I can't find the right color for the dark side of this head. And I said, you know, what should I do there? And he said, color is individual. So I packed my box and I went down to the office and I said, I'm getting a philosophy lesson, I want a painting lesson, I want my money back. So they said, go try Sidney Dickinson. I went to Dickinson and sure enough, ran into the same problem. And Dickinson, the practical man, said, well, just take some Viridian, take some burnt sienna, mix them together, get the right value, put it on the canvas. Too warm, add some Viridian. Too cool, add some burnt sienna. And what a lesson. I said, eureka, at last I found a teacher, not a philosopher. You know, and there's so much philosophy going on. But anyway, Bongard is the star. What a man, what a teacher, what a character.
And you absorb from them.
What, just sensational. And we have tapes, audio tapes, videotapes. We're going to show you these, let you listen to these. The man was just sensational.
Inspirational for you both.
And years later, reading in a magazine, one of the art magazines, the painter would say, I was in doldrums. I just, nothing was happening. I was a bore. I wanted to quit painting. And then I thought, well, I should go to Bongard and take a few classes.
Well, let's talk about you painting. So I think it's a good time for us to go over and see your beautiful garden and home and your studio and where and how you work.
Wonderful. a famous Russian artist said, "Oh, painting is very easy. All you have to do is just mix the right colors and mix the right values and put it on your canvas." But actually, painting, you're constantly making decisions. You're kind of doing scientific work. You're trying to get the right values, trying to get beautiful colors, beautiful, good values, beautiful design, and you're constantly making these decisions with each brush stroke.
Side by side. Actually, Marcia was a bit liberal with her quotation of that famous Russian artist. What he said was, painting's very simple. All you do is put the right color in the right place. Unfortunately, he didn't add that it takes about 10 years to learn what's the right color and where's the right place. And most of us never find out the answer to either.
That was fun. Well, tell me, I have to ask you, do you talk to each other while you're working?
We do occasionally, but most of the time we're very concentrated and involved in what we're doing, and also listening to the music, because that's extremely important. I think,
Well, it was really fun to see that you can work within the same environment and just close yourself off. That's really quite something, I think. Well, George, you started out as a portrait painter, you just said, at NYU.
No, this was at the Art Students League.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, say something about this beautiful painting.
This is a friend of ours in France, Christophe. I took several slides of him. And looking at the slide that this came from, I was just overwhelmed, really, by the effect of sunlight on that skin and the wall behind him of the house, which was ochre, now bathed in light. And I just wanted to capture that sunlight. I shouldn't say that because Christophe won't like it, but I wasn't that much interested in Christophe as I was in this light and what the light was doing. And he was the catalyst that showed me. And so you know, that's the result.
So he was the composition, really, but the light influenced so much how you worked with
I wanted to paint sunlight.
Yeah,
And he was in it. He was the star.
You did. Well, here again, I'm seeing the broad brushstrokes and the combination of tones and color to get an effect. Tell us a little bit about the painting behind me, speaking of color. This one, is that also France?
Yes, that's in a little town called Paradou, which is near Les Baux. And it's just idyllic. It just is the quintessential idyllic location. The road that you see runs about 4 or 5 miles. And I said to Marcia when we were painting there, I could spend the rest of my life on this road, build a little shack here, and just paint here every day, because every 10 steps you took, you found another beautiful composition. And the great variety of, there was pasture, there were brooks, there were wooded areas, there were pines, there were every species of tree, just beautiful.
Well, I would like to take a walk down that road, both of these roads behind me, actually. And so, but I have to ask you about the colors that you're using on the ground. I mean, is this your romanticized version of this plaza and also this other road that I'd like to walk down and get into a dreamland?
A long time ago, speaking of the colors on the ground, a long time ago, before I ever studied art, I was painting all the time, but I happened to bump into, this was in Greenwich Village on the street, a professor from, and that's when I was undergraduate, long time ago, who was from the art department. And I happened to have some paintings, and I said, oh, please, what an opportunity, look at these. Should I switch my major? I'm a music major, maybe I should be an art major. You tell me. So he looked at the paintings, and he said, don't switch your major, which crushed me, because I thought, you have no talent. He said, because what you're doing is so good, and I'd hate to see you become like the rest of us and paint what we're doing in the art department. He said, but one thing I would tell you, don't ever paint the concrete or any kind of a surface with black and white, you know, black diminished with white, because that's ugly. He said, look at that sidewalk. Don't you see the blues and the violets and the reds? And I looked at the sidewalk and I saw none of that. But I think, you know, I'm starting to see it. So there's red, there's blue, there's everything in my, but the light is the important thing. Getting the right value is so important.
Capturing the light,
and it's amazing how bright pavement is, and especially in the Tuileries Gardens, where it's kind of a light, I don't know, dust or whatever, it's there for centuries.
Well, you're helping us all to learn how to look at colors and light, really. I mean, through the artist's eyes. Well, Marcia, can you talk about the 2 beautiful paintings of yours that we have here?
Well, I'd be happy to.
You've captured another idyllic moment here. Where is this painting?
This was not far from our house, and it was a beautiful spring day, very crisp, and I just wanted to capture the freshness of the day, of springtime, and felt that it would be done in color and contrast, and that's basically what I was after.
And which you captured very well. You layer paint, don't you? Besides the broad swatches of color, do you layer the paint?
Yes, because as you're observing, and the light is changing, everything is affecting everything that is there. So the colors are changing, and the more you look and compare areas, the more you see the variety and the difference in, for instance, the greens, because this is basically a green painting, but very cool, very warm. They all play against each other.
There are so many different greens within that painting, which you keep mixing up to your eye, your visual thinking, if you will. Yeah. Well, now, sometimes you paint in the studio as well. Now, there's a still life here, too. Obviously, you painted that in the studio.
Well,
Do you do that in the
this
winter
painting-
time? Is that what?
We were in France on a little vacation, and our friends Beatrice and Christophe came to visit us at our hotel room and brought the mimosa and the violets to us. And the chambermaid was kind enough to bring a vase, and we had fruit in the room. And I set the composition up. The light from the window cast such beautiful, beautiful shadows on the wall, and the color was just drenched in color, the wall. The flowers, well, as you can see, they just have this beautiful gesture of hanging over the vase. And I said to George, oh, this has got to be painted. It's crying to be painted. And I basically was concentrating on just the feel, the freshness, the color, and the drama of the shadows.
The light, as you said, the shadows and light.
Yes.
That's really your issue, isn't it? Besides color, it's light
right.
and
Yes.
shadows and
Yes.
tones and hues and
Yes, and through color and light and values, you can interpret, each of us in our own way, the scene that we're seeing. We don't want to do a photocopy of anything. We want it to be
interpreted
and
through
exact-
your own
exactly,
eyes,
exactly.
which is quite beautiful. It really is quite beautiful. What we're going to do now is just take a short break for a public service announcement, but we'll be right back.
You think I don't know drugs are bad news? Man, I pass dealers on my way to school. See guys in the alley doing crack. I even saw somebody get shot. I already know about drugs, but what I want to know about now is, how do these fly?
Our kids have better things to do than drugs, but they need our help to keep it that way.
Tuberculosis used to be a leading cause of death. Today, it's highly treatable, and healthy people rarely come down with TB, even when they're exposed to it. Still, the number of cases of TB is on the rise, so it's good to know the warning signs. Persistent cough, fatigue, unexplained fever or weight loss, and drenching night sweats are signals to see a doctor. With the right medical treatment, TB can be cured.
For a free booklet with more information, write the Will Rogers Institute, White Plains, New York.
Freddie,
Hi, Grandpa.
sitting out here by yourself?
No, I'm talking to Shep.
Mind if I join you?
For young and old alike, a healthy, happy pet is a companion for life. See that your pet gets regular veterinary care. A public service message from the American Veterinary Medical Association.
A mammogram can reveal breast cancer 2 years before it's large enough to feel with your fingers. That greatly improves your chance to save your life with less drastic forms of treatment. Get your first mammogram between the ages of 35 and 40, unless, of course, you suspect a problem earlier. Then have one every year or two while in your 40s and every year after 50.
A mammogram is a valuable tool in the early detection of breast cancer and can help save your life.
To learn more, write the Will Rogers Institute, White Plains, New York.
Welcome back to Art Talk. I'm here today with Marcia and George Phillips, and we're having a great time talking about these idyllic landscape paintings and colorful still lifes and portraits. Let's see, is there a difference? You were just speaking about the still life that you painted from the French window, the open window, and we're going to talk about France a little bit more. But is there a difference in the resulting painting, whether you do it in a studio or out in the light?
Oh, I
You
think
go
there's
first, Marcia.
Very definitely a difference. And they say 1 hour of painting on location is worth years of studying in a studio. You learn so much from nature painting on location. And it's also more of a challenge, and you're not really intellectualizing. You are there searching for what you see and what's changing.
Well, go ahead, George.
Aside from that difference, tremendous difference in the environment. If you're painting in the Tuileries Gardens, busloads of people come behind you. Incredible, and it's a distraction. Painting along country roads, some nice old peasant comes along, or a retired movie producer like our friend Pierre, who gets very excited and so forth. There things like that happen, and sometimes it's distraction, and sometimes it's beautiful, like the children. Children were watching us paint, and they said, "Are you finished?" "No, we're not finished." "Are you finished?" "No, we're not finished." It's like when they say, "When do we get there if you're going to Maine?" "Are you finished, monsieur?" "Yes, now we're finished." And the children applauded. What a beautiful
So you have an audience out there versus being in the studio. But you also talked about sketches and slides. So when you come back from these travels, do you use both? Do you work with both sketches and slides?
Yes. The slides are basically for you to check your drawing and just for a first idea, general idea of what the scene is. But the sketches that you do on location, there is your information of color and values. And what is on a camera, on a slide or a photograph really is not true to what was there, on location. They're just not the same.
So you use them jointly?
Yes, and you have to, if you are working with a slide, know when to turn the projector or the
really? Yeah. Do you work the same way,
off.
George?
Yes, and memory too. Very often I wake up in the morning with a picture in my head, and it might not be anything that I've ever seen, but just certain arrangement of color and light, this idea. Then I'll go to the slide projector and just zip through them, looking for something that's close to, as a model. And I use that mostly for the drawing, to have the horizon in the right place and where the person's head might be relative to it. That's very difficult to take out of your imagination.
Sure.
But then I revert to that image I woke up with.
So it's like choreographing.
More than what's
It really is like choreographing your subject. Yeah. Well, both have had the good fortune to travel a lot, and we're going to talk about France in a minute. Do you feel that traveling has enhanced your work? Let me ask you to answer
Oh, very
that.
definitely.
It has.
Very definitely. It changed my work completely.
Oh.
The experience of the light, the color, the landscape. There's just nothing. We keep saying, well, we're going to go to Russia, or let's go to Normandy instead of southern France.
Have an intellectual trip.
We always,
well, not that you
we're in a
don't,
rut.
but
It's a magnet. We fly to Nice, we get in the car, and we go looking.
Off we go.
Wonderful. Yes. That's wonderful. Well, let's go back to your home and talk a little bit about your French experiences.
To seem to be in another world when you're painting, and I think it's incredible that you're able to be in the same room together, and you lose yourself, don't you? You're in some mystical place. Tell me about being in this mystical place, Marcia.
It is mystical. You just are totally unaware of anything that's happening around you except what's happening with you and your canvas and your paints. And if you're inspired with a beautiful scene or in your mind, or if you're actually painting from a sketch or even on location, that inspiration just carries you off into another creative world.
Well, it is mystical, isn't it? And you know, Joseph Campbell recently said, recently I read, an artist is a mystic with a craft. Do you feel like you're a mystic, George?
Well, I don't know if I totally agree with Mr. Campbell. I think there's a craft and there's an art. And I think craft is, the foundation on which somebody creates art. but I think the two are both separate things. I just...
Really? Really?
Yeah, I hate to disagree, but
No, you're allowed to disagree.
I've disagreed with New York Times critics, and I've disagreed with Clement Greenberg, and I'll disagree with them. But I think art is art, craft is craft, and I think there might be some mysticism involved.
Well, it's a mystery, George. That's really, I think, what he's getting at. It's a mysterious place that an artist can arrive at, and you two are able to do it in the same room, to go into your own mysterious place. And I just find that beautiful. I really do. Yeah. Well, now you both were working on paintings that seem to be French or European. Now, where were you in your painting?
This painting was started from a sketch that I did on location in southern France, and it was in Les Vieux Routes de Grasse, which was the old Grasse route. And I was just very, very taken by the light and the openness and just the poetry of the scene. And I was trying to capture that feeling in a limited palette.
Well, now, Marcia, did you start the sketch there, and then how do you do it? How do you transpose a French scene into your Connecticut studio?
Well, you have your sketch as a reference for the color, for light, and then even if you were using a slide or a photograph, you can use that up to a certain point, and then let that magic take over. You're involved, you're experimenting, and accidents happen as you're painting, and they're beautiful, and you want to use them. So you could go off into a totally different route than what you had imagined when you started the painting, and it's a new experience. It's an adventure, and you hope at the end of your adventure you're going to have a masterpiece, and it isn't always so. But,
That's really quite something. Well, George, you were also in France in your painting, weren't you?
Yes.
And what about the light? How do you capture it? Obviously, you capture the light, but how do you do it from there to here?
Memory.
Really?
Because a photograph, especially a print, is not going to give you authentic or realistic color. A slide gets a little bit closer, but it's still not right. The values are incorrect. The darks are much darker usually than the dark that you see. You don't see the subtleties in the darkness. It'll be one tone, whereas the darkness under a tree, for instance, on that patio, a slide would just show one color and one value. But you know from having painted there and having observed it that there are some warm greens, there are some blues and cool greens, even some purples in these trees. And the same thing on the people. The colors are much more complicated than what you get. Photography really is, it's a wonderful thing, because I don't want to get photographers angry with it. Just like I don't want craftspeople to be angry, because in a lot of craft there's art.
Of course.
I see it in a tablecloth. I see it in a picture frame.
Sure.
And the same thing with photographs. Great art in photographs, but the color is off.
Yeah.
You know, it is off, and they should be the first to admit it. And very frequently the values are off. So you have to, you paint from, largely from experience. Largely
That's
from
what
experience.
Because
if it was as simple as copying what's on a photograph or then everybody could be an artist, because it's easy to copy.
Well, sure. Well, now, when you go out, for instance, in France, you're working on these French paintings, and you're going there again soon. Do you go together, and do you each find a spot so that you go one place and Marcia goes another place? I mean, how do you agree on where you're going to be painting?
Marcia has a genius for picking a composition, a subject that I just envy. I don't have it. maybe I'm too impulsive. We stop the car, we get out of the car, and I'm opening my easel. At the first thing I see, I'm just sort of like a dog in heat, and there's a scene. I've got to paint it. Marcia, on the other hand, comes out, and she has this composure, and she also has this talent. She sees compositions. That's why so frequently when it comes to slides, I say, Marcia, take the camera and you take the slides, because she'll compose better.
Oh!
That's very kind of you to say, but I would put it simply as it's just love. I have to love what I'm looking at, and I have to love a scene and want to paint the scene and be inspired. So I will take quite a while looking around until something absolutely hits me, and I have to paint it.
Ah.
And by then, George is very, very involved in painting.
He's already started. Oh.
Yes, and I'm then worried that he is going to be through painting and want to move on, and I haven't even started.
Well, you've been going to France. I know you've traveled all over the world, really, but France is the one place that you like the most to paint. Is that right, besides Connecticut?
It's where our muse is.
Really?
She's there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's there, our muse.
Yeah. Well, what about when you're in these little villages, particularly in the south of France, and I've been there many times, and the people are so friendly. Do they come along and do they stop you while you're painting? How's your French?
They're just wonderful, and that's probably one of the reasons why we enjoy painting there so much. And painting on location is really an adventure and can be a misadventure sometimes. I just recalled one year we went to southern France for 2 weeks in April, and we were staying in this very small town called Pont-de-Loup. We were there for 2 weeks, and it rained every day. Finally, one day, the landlady came out and said, very graciously, we were perfectly welcome to paint anywhere in her hotel and anything that we chose to paint. We did wake up one day, and it was a very clear, lovely day, no sun, and we thought we'd grab the opportunity and paint right out on the veranda. We set up our easels and were painting, and suddenly I heard this, and we turned around, and there were 4 or 5 little French boys standing watching us. And after a while, they came over to George and said, are you through? Is it done? Are you finished? And he said, no, not yet. And we continued painting, and then they came back. Are you finished? No. Then, quite a while afterwards, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, they came back. Are you finished? And George said, yes. And they all stood there and applauded.
The bocce game is over. Yeah. Oh, that's really wonderful. So you've met a lot of interesting people along the way too.
Oh,
yeah.
Marcia was at her beautiful location. I was 100 yards down, not quite, 60 yards down the road, side of the road. The car was parked. We were painting, and all of a sudden I heard this man behind me saying, oh, I just can't believe this. I didn't even know he was there, because you saw somebody who can paint an olive tree. He said, I've been in all the galleries and museums, and I never see a decent, that's beautiful. And he ran up to Marcia's easel, and then he came back, he said, please, you have to come with me. Well, this was the beginning of a tremendous friendship. Year after year, we go to his orchard and we paint. He has several of our paintings in his collection. In fact, he said, the first thing he said is, come up and paint my orchard. I'm going to buy the paintings. He said, I know I'm going to buy the paintings. But Pierre Poussou, Pierre loves olive trees. He won the silver medal for all of France for olive oil 2 years in a row. He won the gold medal for the region.
Another
for
friend
Provence.
Through painting.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
And he just, but terrific friends and other friends
and
that we see every time we go back.
And they become
all
supporters.
From just painting.
Yeah, a life experience. That's terrific. Well, let's go back now to the TV station and take a look at some of the specific paintings, and we'll talk about them and where they are. Let's do that now.
I'd like to be that angel on your shoulders when you go to France and paint. You have such a wonderful time and so many great experiences. But I've been aesthetically arrested by this road to Paradou that is here on the wall with us. And we talked about it a little bit, George, but I'd kind of like to walk down that road. You just capture idealism. You give us an idyllic place to be. I feel like I'd be into that painting. Is that easy for you to do?
Well, that's a very special place. I remember when we were painting there, I said to Marcia, I could build a little shack here on this road. It's about 4 miles long, and just spend the rest of my life on this road painting it. It's so beautiful. And
well, you've captured it so beautifully.
and such a variety, too.
Yeah.
There are pines, there are meadows, there are woods. It's just sensational.
And then you have that colorful road again that one could almost go into like a dream. And
well, I thank you very much, because, that's what I was looking for, really.
Yeah. Well, you both do that.
When I look at the painting, I feel his love of that place.
Yes. He's
And
captured it.
Yes, and I think that's something very special about painting on location. You become so intimate with the subject, with that spot that you're painting. It always is very, very special.
Yeah. Well, you know what else is special to me? The fact that, well, to have two artists within the same family is unusual, but to have a married couple who paint together and work together. Do you ever criticize each other, or do you ever feel competitive about painting? That's a tough question, I know.
No,
Go ahead, George.
Well, no, I don't think there's ever any spirit of competition. I've never felt one, and I know Marcia hasn't. We both have a great respect for the way we see things and the way we paint things, for each other's work. And Marcia's very helpful.
Really?
Very helpful. She criticizes. She's an excellent teacher, because she's a diplomat.
Isn't that
and
nice?
she knows how to say things. She knows how to insult your painting very kindly.
Oh.
No, she's a terrific critic. She has a great eye, not just for my paintings, but wherever we go, museums, galleries. She can really criticize beautifully. And I'm lucky to have that.
Exactly.
I'm lucky to have that.
But you see, I feel very lucky also, because George has a terrific eye, and he can usually immediately see what is missing in my painting.
Really? Well, do you get it like a painter's block, and then one can help the other?
Exactly. I was going to explain that something happens when you spend so much time working, struggling with a painting, that you very often suffer from something called amour propre. And you almost, it's like a mother with a child. It's difficult to see its faults. And it's the same thing when you're working with a painting. You lose that objectivity. And it's wonderful to have George come over and be able to see it with fresh eyes.
Yeah, we're lucky.
I know you are.
Always have someone there. The artist who paints alone doesn't have that, and his work is not going to be helped as ours.
That's right, and I think an artist must have a continuing dialogue with other artists.
Absolutely.
Oh yes.
So you have yours now. Do you have other artists that you have a dialogue with?
We used to. The last few years we haven't. In Los Angeles, we were with a community of artists every day, and we're still friends with them. And we used to make the rounds of, for instance, we'd go to the Lyman Allen Museum and paint and talk to other people. It's fun and it's good.
Stimulating.
Yes, I would think yeah. Well, what about other artists who have influenced your work? I'll ask you, Marcia, do you have the masters that you look to?
Oh, yes. And we share our likes of many of the artists. I would have to say obviously Sergei Bongard is a terrific and tremendous influence on our work. And then there were many Russian artists, Ilya Repin, Korovin, Levchenko, Spanish artists like Sorolla and Pinazzo, the French Monet, Matisse, Pissarro, Corot,
most
English,
of whom are
just
concerned with light.
Yes,
light.
John Singer Sargent,
Yes,
Chase,
yeah.
all of them.
All
yes.
of them.
Yes.
Yeah. You too, George. Do you have any others to?
Yeah, I don't think I can add to it. She really is an encyclopedia.
Well, looking at art, I find, even as a non-artist, very important for inspiration for whatever reason and stimulation.
Even reading, like the Henry, the Art Spirit, Robert Henry's Art Spirit, I think I've read it 8 or 10 times, and every time it's an inspiration.
You find something new. from
Again,
it.
it's the communication. You know, I feel like I'm sitting and talking to the man.
Isn't that great? Yeah. Well, speaking of inspiration too, and all of these romantic traditions of music and art and poetry. Now, I know you both play several instruments. What does music mean to you in your work?
It's my soul food.
Good.
So often, I listen to some music that just is so beautiful, and it gets even more beautiful.
Yes.
And I say to myself, there's no limit to beauty, and it helps me. Then I look at my canvas and say, there's no limit. Get at that canvas.
It's very true. Often, now we were playing something by Rachmaninoff the other day, and commented to each other as we were painting, how beautiful. And then a little while later, it was excruciatingly beautiful. And finally, I had to lay my brushes down, and I said, I can't paint. It's just so beautiful. And we both just stood there and just feeling the music.
Yeah, you transcended the world, really. And that's, well, then I will ask this question now, and perhaps, George, you can answer this because we've been discussing it. What function do you feel art serves in this world of ours?
Well, you know, there are some people who believe that art should have a message, and you know, it should, like for today, you should be painting something about starving children in Africa, or the strife in what used to be Yugoslavia, and so forth. And I guess, you know, to some artists, that's their inspiration. That's what they want to paint. We don't feel that way. We sympathize, we empathize with these problems. They're crushing. They hurt. But when I look at a blank canvas, I want to put something on it that makes a statement about something. Here's something beautiful. When Marcia was talking about this beautiful music that makes you stop. I like to paint a painting that makes people stop and say, "Oh, how beautiful!" And it's nature. It's my interpretation of nature. So that's my motive. That's my intention.
So beauty, to put it succinctly, and the miracle of nature.
You used the word issue before, and absolutely, that's the issue, beauty. And you know, some people might say that's sentimental, he's a cornball or whatever. I don't care. So I'm a cornball. I do what something in here tells me to do.
Well, I'm going to ask you another question coming from that beautiful idyllic world. George, again, what is your opinion and feelings about contemporary and particularly abstract art? And maybe in 3 minutes or less.
Yeah, no, this will be very quick. I was reading about a writer, and some critics said that this writer came along at the right time because you all of a sudden you had modern writing. And modern writing set new standards which are very easy for everybody to attain. They look at it and say, oh, I can do that. And the same thing with the painting. They look at an abstract painting and people say, all of a sudden say, gee, I can do that. And the critics then are even intimidated and think, maybe I don't know what to say. Maybe it's good and maybe it isn't. How do you know? You know, I have my own feelings. I look, there are some abstract paintings that I think are absolutely beautiful, and I wish I could afford them. I'd have one in my house.
Ah.
But there are so many where I say, that's a mountebank. That's a dilettante or even an outright fake, you know, who did the Pollock by spinning a can around a funnel.
Do you feel the same way, Marcia?
I do, but probably George has a little bit more of an appreciation towards abstract art than I. I can appreciate a beautiful design and good color and technique, but I am not as inspired by
what you are inspired by. Yeah.
Do we have 30 seconds more on modern art? Abstract painting is just one little segment. How about the guy who builds a fence across some state?
Yes.
You know,
Christie.
The man who had someone shoot him in the arm so that he could write about it and then take pictures. That's art. The man who wheelbarrowed a bunch of bricks and mortar and dumped them in the middle of the floor in the Museum of Modern Art, and that's a sculpture. You know, there I think it goes a little bit too extreme. I can't take that. I can't accept that.
Well, you've told us how you feel, but I had to ask you, because you picture our world in such a beautiful, and I've probably overused the word romantic, which to me is so inspiring and lovely to look at. So you feed your own souls by doing the work you do. There's not an intellectualization going on all the time. It's more spiritual and more feeling. Yeah. Well, one last question, and that is, would you do anything differently? You've both had careers that were so apart. I mean, when you think about video and TV, and which in today's world is so apart from your traditional way of working, anything you'd do differently?
Well, I've never looked back at the decision to walk away from my job at ABC. Never.
Good.
Once in a while, and I think you can get some idea of how I feel about, once in a while I dream that I'm working there, and I have to call it a nightmare.
Yeah, okay. Do you feel the same way, Marcia? Would you do anything differently?
No, I wouldn't, because I think I was involved in something quite different in the ballet, and that was with art, that was beauty, that was line, that was music. But I understand the passion I had and the discipline, and that is applied to my work now.
Fantastic. No more looking back. I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you so much for being with us.
A pleasure.
And thank you for being with us for this week's Art Talk. Until next time, I'm Patricia Shippee.
Thank you.